Night fell as usual over the silent mountain ranges of Sinaloa, but suddenly, the darkness was shattered by a flash that was neither lightning nor the sound of artillery fire. Many residents recalled they still could not forget the unusual sound, unlike bombs or gunfire, that rang out and then turned into a blazing sea of fire in the stillness of the night. A security camera had accidentally captured on screen several small, bright dots descending from the sky, moving quietly like ghosts in the night. They had no idea they had just witnessed part of the most top-secret operation against the cartels ever carried out. Information about this attack using 18 MQ-9 Reaper UAVs was confirmed by multiple credible security sources, showing a level of seriousness far beyond anything imaginable. But what makes people wonder is not the outcome, but this. Who gave the order? And why did as many as 18 military drones appear right inside Mexican territory, a place long considered out of reach? This will be the mystery that opens a story never before revealed. So, in your opinion, who is truly behind this bold operation? Join Military Power to continue exploring and uncover that secret, and don't forget to leave a comment and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next part. The modern context shows that the cartels in the states of Sinaloa and Michoacan are not just ordinary drug trafficking organizations, but have become a formidable source of fentanyl supply for the United States, a synthetic stimulant that caused more than 73,000 deaths in 2022 alone. This tragic figure left American public opinion unable to remain still, forcing the government to decisively change its strategy. And in February 2025, Washington officially designated 6 Mexican cartels, including Sinaloa and Jalisco New Generation, as foreign terrorist organizations, FDOs. This was not merely a political statement, but also paved the way for the use of military weapons and technology that had previously only been employed in counterterrorism operations abroad. Immediately, U.S. agencies were authorized to deploy heavy measures such as drone strikes and military intelligence tracking, creating a turning point that had previously been highly sensitive both legally and diplomatically. For many months before the strange flashes tore apart the night sky over Sinaloa, the atmosphere in Washington had been quietly shifting. U.S. intelligence units were not only tracking every movement of the drug trafficking gangs, but had also deployed every advanced reconnaissance tool to gather information. U-2 spy planes circled at high altitude to observe. Satellites hung in orbit, capturing every trace of movement, while border eavesdropping devices intercepted signals from phones and radios. In addition, a series of 18 covert UAV flights, silent, with no warning lights, penetrated Mexican airspace to verify potential targets. These flights were never announced. They operated so silently that locals took no notice of their presence. Most importantly, the data collected was not just images. Analysts cross-referenced satellite perspectives with mobile phone signals and the movement schedules of container trucks traveling at night. By combining multiple systems and sources, the tracking became precise, down to exact coordinates, which locations were weapons depots, which were drug laboratories, each guarded tightly by layers of skilled security. This hunt was not simply about who did what, but a game of extreme precision and timing. It could be said that the entire operation remained in darkness until the final seconds before the strike. How long had it taken? No one knew, but the silence of each day was stretched to the limit as intelligence experts finally completed a full picture of the cartel's operational chain. All that data from satellite images captured at midnight, to fragmented radio signals, to the rumble of truck wheels over dirt tracks, formed a detailed map of the organization, its people, and its locations. And then, when that map was complete, only one question was posed in the dimly lit control room. Strike now, or wait for the perfect moment? Wait for more targets to appear, or act immediately when the weapons depot and lab had been fully exposed in the darkness. At that final threshold, when every clue was in place and every dot on the map was connected, the decision would be made to fire or to wait. But the question that truly gave pause was not when, but if the perfect opportunity came, would anyone dare seize it, even just once? The night remained still when the silhouette of an MQ-9 Reaper quietly emerged from unseen high altitudes. This drone was not an ordinary remotely piloted aircraft. It was the most sophisticated hunter weapon the United States had ever deployed. The Reaper had a cruising speed of about 230 miles per hour, approximately 370 kilometers per hour, a range exceeding 1,150 miles, about 1,850 kilometers, and could loiter in the air for up to 27 hours or longer if using the extended endurance version, staying aloft for more than a full day and night. What made the MQ-9 special was also its large payload capacity, around 1,700 kilograms, enough to carry up to 8 AGM-114 Hellfire missiles with high-precision strike capability, or GBU-12 Paveway 2 laser-guided bombs. Hellfire missiles were not just for tanks. They had been adapted to hit enclosed targets like hidden drug labs, while the GBU-12 allowed for pinpoint strikes on small, reinforced concrete positions with minimal collateral damage. Beyond its power, the Reaper embodied stealth. Operating at over 15,000 meters, it was almost impossible to detect with the naked eye in the darkness. Below, the silence was unbroken. No lights, no engine noise. The remote pilot, sitting elsewhere in a secure command center, guided its every move. The target appeared in sharp detail through infrared cameras, pulse-detecting radar, and a targeting laser aimed directly at the location to be cleared. For example, NASA and the Air Force once described the Reaper as a soundless aircraft, invisible in the night, with the ability to track and strike unexpectedly. In the command center, once the Reaper locked onto its target, it took only seconds to transmit the order to fire. Imagine the scene: a hovering laser dot marking a cartel weapons depot in the jungle night, followed by an explosion slicing through the silence like a sharp blade. One of the 18 MQ-9s operating that night crossed off the first meth lab, no trace, no spectacle, but with a ruthless effect. This scene was nothing like a movie. It was a reality confirmed by security analysts, based on radar data, on-site audio, and drone signals. The Reaper did not just attack, it was the cold, precise arm of destruction. So if you were in the commander's seat, facing the silent night, and with the MQ-9 already locked on target, would you give the order to fire immediately? Or would you wait longer until all targets appeared at once to unleash a synchronized strike that would maximize the destruction? When the clock struck 2:13 a.m., a green light signal rang out in the command center. The long-awaited authorization had been given. Time to launch, time to strike. Since the days of covert data gathering, every coordinate and every movement had been prepared to explode into action. In that instant, 18 UAVs, like an awakened hunting pack, took off in unison. They split into two clear formations, the attack group flying straight toward pre-designated targets, the support group maintaining watch around them, ready to respond should anything go wrong. The first target was clearly marked on the campaign map, a massive weapons depot hidden deep in the Sinaloa forest. The second, a sophisticated meth production lab in Michoacan, where the cartel concealed it under cunning camouflage. A faint glow from the infrared beam of the UAV's thermal camera could already be seen. That moment became the fateful moment. The first explosion landed like a cold punch in the night, followed by a violent chain reaction. Ammunition cooking off, old fuel igniting, then surrounding bombs detonating, a scenario straight from hell. Frames of buildings collapsed, black smoke billowed, flames flickered under the night sky like a macabre dance of death. In just 30 minutes, at least 10 targets were wiped off the map labs, storage sites, and suspected cartel positions. This was not mere speculation. Experts confirmed the results using drone video footage, radar imagery, and satellite data. Nothing remained hidden, everything had been flattened with cold precision. Yet that power reached far beyond breaking concrete walls and destroying equipment. The strike shattered a fragile diplomatic relationship that had been painstakingly built between Washington and Mexico. While the operation unfolded in absolute silence, public opinion in Mexico began to erupt. Many asked, what right did the U.S. have to unleash military force directly on a neighboring nation's soil? From the government to the people, from the press to online forums, all began to question sovereignty, security cooperation, and the boundaries of military action. This, it could be said, was a turning point that could not be taken lightly on either side of the border. The attack was not just the elimination of cartel infrastructure, it ignited an unprecedented crisis in relations. As each target fell and each clock seemed to stop, what was broken was not just manpower or assets, but the unspoken limits in diplomatic policy that had long been respected. In the end, when the last explosion faded into silence, the question left was not simply about the scale of the damage, but a political calculation. Such a brutal act could pave the way for decisive solutions, or it could slam every door of cooperation shut, once trust had been shattered. After the UAV strike finished off its targets, the night was not only broken by flames, but also by the heart-wrenching screams echoing from a nearby village. A crooked house, one wall collapsed, and the piercing cries of an injured little boy. These scenes were in no strategic plan, yet they were the harsh reality of unforeseen consequences. Rumors spread like wildfire on social media. A few civilians killed, many injured, including children. Multiple sources reported on the incident, fueling Mexico's public opinion with both unease and anger. Mexican media wasted no time in covering the story intensively. From major newspapers to social media pages, everyone from villagers to investigative journalists repeated the same line. A military action in the middle of the night had placed innocent civilians in the line of fire. The chorus of public outrage grew louder, making it impossible for the community to remain indifferent. Immediately, President Claudia Sheinbaum issued a strong condemnation, declaring this a serious violation of sovereignty. She emphasized, Mexicans will not accept any form of intervention or incursion from outside, and stressed that the United States had no right to deploy troops or military weapons on Mexican soil. These statements not only threatened diplomatic stability, but also reflected a red line that could not be crossed in US-Mexico relations. The fallout did not stop at words. Mexico promptly suspended intelligence sharing, halted the extradition of criminals to the US, and pushed forward constitutional amendments to tighten restrictions on foreign military intervention. Security cooperation, carefully built over many years, was now fractured. Between the two nations, once partners in border control, trade, and migration, there now lay a rift not easily repaired. Meanwhile, in Washington's Department of Defense, the strike was viewed as an effective, yet high-risk tactic. Generals and security officials suddenly found themselves torn between using military might to stop cross-border crime and preserving safe diplomatic relations. A diplomatic crisis had quietly taken root, beginning on a night when locals had no idea they were witnessing a grim chapter of history. The truth is, the strike succeeded, but the cost was a severe erosion of trust and cooperation. As each concrete wall crumbled, as each home lay in ruins, what was destroyed was not only the physical, but the trust between two nations. And then, amid the dying embers of that night, one open question rang out between the anger of the people and the political halls. Do you think the US should apologize or continue the campaign despite Mexico's reaction? After the deafening explosions faded and the night gradually regained its stillness, the impact of the strike went far beyond flattened weapons depots or destroyed labs. The fragile bond between the two nations began to show deep cracks. Cooperation in border control, once a cornerstone in reducing the flow of drugs and migrants, was immediately stalled. Intelligence sharing mechanisms, which had operated quietly yet effectively, were now caught between legal constraints and the suspicion of whether this was still normal cooperation. The USMCA trade agreement, a solid foundation for economic partnership, also came under heavy pressure in this new light, as security politics took priority over trade interests. On the humanitarian front, the lack of coordination led to unintended consequences. Illegal migration routes surged as Mexico scaled back cooperation on extradition and border enforcement. Many migrant groups sought alternative paths across the border, becoming more chaotic and less monitored, a direct outcome of the diplomatic crisis, according to security experts. Almost immediately, waves of anti-US protests erupted across Mexico's major cities. From Mexico City to Guadalajara, crowds marched in anger, hoisting banners denouncing violations of sovereignty. News reports reflected not only strong public reaction, but also a display of national pride in rejecting foreign interference. Naturally, these heated demonstrations deepened tensions, yet they also revealed a grim truth about the state of bilateral relations. Across the border, Washington suddenly faced a dual pressure: safeguarding security amid the domestic fentanyl crisis, while managing a severe diplomatic confrontation. In this moment, the US government seemed torn between two conflicting goals: using military force to hit the cartels, as demonstrated in the drone campaign, and preserving strategic cooperation with Mexico. Many domestic officials warned that unilateral military action could dismantle the entire existing framework of security collaboration. During this crisis, diplomatic moves came in rapid succession, suspending intelligence sharing, halting criminal extraditions, and pushing constitutional reforms to block foreign military operations. These steps served as a warning signal. Mexico wanted not only cooperation, but also respect for its sovereignty. Prolonged tension even unsettled the business sector. The lack of clear policy direction put USMCA on shaky ground. When security becomes a red line that forces military power into the political arena, it becomes difficult to strike a balance between economic interests and diplomacy. The relationship was now tested as never before in years of partnership. In the end, the echoes of the strike still lingered, but the real casualty may not have been the cartel's assets. It was the stability of international relations, trust, cooperation, and above all, the question of where the limits of action lie when confronting an unseen enemy in a battle space without clear borders. In less than a few weeks after the intense drone campaign, signs of counteraction began to emerge from the shadows. The cartels were not going to sit still and be erased so easily. They adapted quickly, opening secret tunnels slanting toward Guatemala and Honduras, new routes that were not only sophisticated, but far harder to intercept than the old ones that had been sealed off. According to intelligence reports, the cartels exploited their cross-border network to keep smuggling, rerouting shipments out of the reach of drones and US forces. The underground tunnels linking Mexico with Guatemala and Honduras not only helped them evade radar, but also allowed the transport of high-potency fentanyl and meth without passing through ports or land checkpoints. Once the cartels had successfully shifted their routes across the border, the fentanyl crisis in the US did not ease. In fact, it worsened. In 2022, there were 73,838 deaths from synthetic opioids, most of them fentanyl, illegally produced and trafficked from Mexico into the United States. efforts to improve interdiction appeared insufficient, as the cartels continually shifted their operations, expanded their reach, and altered tactics. The cartel's flexibility was the clearest proof that military force, no matter how strong, cannot eradicate a deeply entrenched criminal network that knows how to adapt quickly. They were not merely traditional combatants. The cartels functioned as an underground economic system, reacting, operating, and evading in ways that could be anticipated only in part. These new tunnels, the clandestine routes through Central America, and the rising fentanyl death toll in the US served as a costly reminder. This war is not simply about bombs and bullets, it is about strategy, persistence, and comprehensive prevention, and military power alone will never be enough. As the final light of the explosions faded, the MQ-9 Reapers quietly turned back, leaving behind weapons depots and drug labs reduced to nothing but ash. 18 UAVs had erased multiple key cartel facilities, removing some of the most powerful leaders from the board. Yet the price of that victory was not measured solely by the number of targets destroyed. It was etched into US-Mexico diplomacy, with deep cracks from President Claudia Sheinbaum's furious reaction to the wave of anti-US protests across Mexico. The war on drugs clearly is not just about bombs and UAVs. It is a total war of economics, politics, and society, where each military decision can set off consequences far beyond the battlefield. Fentanyl still pours into the US with more than 70,000 deaths each year from this drug and other synthetic opioids. If you were in the White House, would you keep striking hard or look for a way to cooperate and change the rules of the game? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Military Power so you won't miss the military stories that have long been kept in the shadows.